You know, when I was thinking of this morning, I knew that there wouldn't be a whole lot of us. I said to some of the people at the 8:30 service, the 8:30 attendance could easily outnumber 10 o'clock today. Actually, it's almost identical. There's 2 more people here at 8 o'clock, which is kind of neat. I think that really is kind of neat. And I really do wonder whether there are many churches this Sunday that have more than 40 people, at least in our diocese. I know that there are some churches that have combined services. One of them is shut down and encourage our Christians to go to another church. I know that that's the case with Beaconsfield United. They're joining Cedar Park United today for their service. But we are here. You know that I have a problem with not having services. I think it's okay occasionally if there's a reason not to have a service, but just not to have a service for no good reason, I think it's ridiculous. It seems to me that ridiculous might not be the right word, but it's really changed mine. We're here, we are to be a people of worship. And if worship becomes secondary or tertiary to something else, folks, it's really time to take a look. It's really time to take a look. So, unless something happens, we will always have our services. They will vary. They might be led by different people, but we will have our services. Today, I want to get really honest today. Not that I normally like you on a Sunday morning, but I want to get really honest, and to some degree, indiscreetly honest. I'm not going to make up anything, I'm not going to exaggerate anything, but I want to be really straight up with you. Because I feel very strongly that one of the major things that ails the church today and is endemic and at least touches us is a lack of honesty within the structure of the church. Folks, things are failing structurally. And that is not in any way to cast doubt on God or His interest in us or anything at all. But structurally, things are failing. One of the things I do, as you know, is I go on the internet a lot and I learn a lot of things. There's this guy by the name of Eddie O'Brien who does a talk called After Midnight. It's a TED Talk, and he's also got it on his own website. I really would suggest you look at it. One of the things he says in this, what I consider brilliant talk, is that the pace of change has outpaced our pace of learning. So things in society are changing faster than we're learning how to deal with the change. When that happens, things are going to start falling apart. And I gotta say, without commenting on the rest of society, if you want to look at one institution where that is patently true, it is the church. That the pace of change in our society has outpaced our ability to learn how to deal with it or to adapt to it. Okay? I believe that there are tremendous ministry opportunities today in the church, but because of our structural paralysis and our lethargy and our sheer bloody-minded laziness, the church is not capitalizing on the opportunities that I believe God is bringing to us. And so that's what I want to be talking about, and then I'm going to make it something very specific about St. Mary's in the future. I want to tell you a couple of stories. Walter, the first one is about you, but you're not allowed to make any jokes, okay? You might feel tempted to make a joke, and I don't want you to. A lot of years ago, Walter and I think there were some other people from St. Mary's, attended a conference at St. Peter's Church, one-day conference at St. Peter's Church in town, Mount Royal. And I forget the topic, I forget what the day was about. I do remember being irritated with a lot of the speakers, I do remember that. But as is often the case, there was a question and answer period. And Walter got up, and I do not remember what he asked. I do remember the bumbling response he got. I don't remember the question he asked, but he was Walter, and we all know Walter. Walter is a big man with a big heart and a big voice. You know, there aren't too many things that are small about Walter. And so Walter stood up and asked his question in a Walter way. You know, that's Walter. After, we're sitting at lunch. Not Walter, me. I was sitting with one of my clergy colleagues. And she said to me about Walter, not knowing that I knew Walter, not knowing that he was a Christian man, "That man scares me." And I went, "Who?" "Oh, that man." And she said whatever he needed. "Oh, Well, he's one of my parishioners. Now, I was stunned. Here was a priest in the church. She heard a guy ask a question in a loud voice, and her response to that was to say, he scares me. She had neither met him, spoke to him, knew about him, asked anyone who he was. Nothing like that. It's just, So what she was saying was, he didn't meet my expectations. He didn't come across the way I want people to come across to me. And therefore, I'm going to abreact or negatively react. Show me what chapter and verse that is in the Bible. Well, what I said was that he's one of my parishioners. And I then said two things about Walter. I think I've told you both things that I said. I said, you know, if ever you see Walter standing and he's got his hands held behind his back, you don't have to worry that one of them has a knife in it. He's not that type of man. And I said, the other thing is, and I said, I know this of certainty about this man, that if ever he finds himself in conflict with me, or me in conflict with him, or we have a disagreement, I'm going to be the first person he comes to. He's not going to try and trash me and destroy me. He's going to come to me and talk about it first. That's what I said to her. She acted as though I had just given her some toxic chemical. Yeah, I would have thought she might have, okay, maybe I prejudged. No. All of a sudden, I was in his camp rather than her camp. That attitude sickens me. It sickens me. There's, you know, I've been writing a book. Yeah. There's a line that I came up with. I think it's original, though occasionally I'll be, you know, humming a tune and I think I'm making it up, but I've really stolen it from somewhere, like George Harrison stealing My Sweet Lord, you know? Anyway, be that as it may. It's this. If you're ever captured, pray that they throw you to the lions, not the Christians.
Well, tell them what the Archdeacon said.
No. We won't do that. You won't go there. Pray they throw you to the lions, not the Christians. I got to tell you, in my experience, the thing that hinders the ministry of the kingdom more than anything else, more than our secularized society, more than the lack of generally accepted morals and norms in our society, more than anything else, certainly not the absence of God, because he's not absent, is the people who are supposed to be the ones serving him and obedient to him. The problem is not with God, the problem is not with the world, the problem is with the church. And here I go back to Eddie Obeng very quickly. By the way, this is going to turn positive. I go back to Eddie Obeng very quickly. The pace of change has outpaced our ability to deal with it. And we respond with panic, and with fear, and with fright. And we do just what they did when they were expanding westward in good old USA. We circle the wagons and hunker down, take aim, and fire. Well, no. This was a spontaneous, non-spontaneous action. We circle the wagons, hunker down, and fire. Then we take aim. Occasionally the wrong thing. It amazed me personally when I was going through a very difficult time in my life. And what particularly was about is not sailing to the start. I was going through a really, really tough time in my life. And I kind of expected support and encouragement from my colleagues in ministry. And I will say that there were some who were very supportive and who called me up and asked how I was doing and said they were praying for me. No judgment, no request for explanations, no condemnation. But I got to tell you, that was a lot fewer than the ones who wanted to score points. That was hard. That was hard. Some people were invasive, some people were rude, and some people were cruel. And some friends, people who I would have considered friends, betrayed me. you're not dealing with a person face to face and directly, if you're going through side doors, back doors, cavern doors, cave doors, haunted house doors, you're betraying a relationship. And of course, in most of those cases, what they considered themselves to be doing was God's will. Because we have to defend and justify our sin. Otherwise, we have to confess it and repent of it. So I've seen within the church that sometimes when push comes to shove, in terms of our relationships and everything else, we make, shall I say it, because we don't really want to know what I want to say, we make inappropriate choices on how we react to situations. We make inappropriate choices. And sometimes, often, the inappropriate choices we make and the strategic behaviors that come as a result of those inappropriate choices cause a lot of hurt and cause damage to the kingdom of God. It is not by accident, and I don't want to go down this road too far today, but it is not by accident that when David Harvey does this thing on the church, he invented the church lady. You know, it is not by accident that when this old comedy show here on Deputy Showing Aid, Three's Company was on, and Chrissy, Suzanne Summers' father, was a minister, he was portrayed as a well-intentioned, bumbling idiot. That is how church is perceived. And even if it's not divided through, when it is not perceived as horrible and corrupt, is perceived as bumbling, inept, and the worst word of all, irrelevant. Irrelevant. Oh God, how could that word ever come to be associated with the church? When you consider, just in the briefest possible ways, what the season is about. How could the word irrelevant ever come to be used in the same sentence as church? How is that possible? How is it possible? Well, and then I look around at the church. I heard this morning after my 8:30 service, which was somewhat different than this one, that one of the area churches now, if you were to go, how would you feel if this happened at St. Mary's? You came to church one Sunday, and the altar rail was gone, the altar was gone, all that stuff was gone, and the pews were all gone. Everything churchy was gone, because the only way the church could keep going was in terms of rentals. So the church has become basically a rental institution. And a dance troupe now was the main occupant of the church. That it was not identified in any way as a worship space. How would you feel if you walked in, and you saw coat racks of... Now, I'm not suggesting that you need a sanctuary to worship God. I would never suggest that in a million years. But at the same time, church after church closing, church after church after church surviving off the rental money they get from people who are not interested in the ministry of the church. Ladies and gentlemen, something's wrong somewhere. Something's wrong somewhere. Unless you can tell me that there are fewer needs in the world, and the church has indeed become irrelevant to the world we live in. Something's going on somewhere. Now, why do I say this today? All sorts of reasons. One, and I'm going to focus on one just a little bit, but only a little bit, because it's a big issue we see. We're at the end of the year, and the years at St. Mary's go by way too fast. And I look back on the year, and I see tremendous ministry having been accomplished in this place. Wonderful service to the community. And you know the list. I don't need to do the list, do I? Just some wonderful things going on. But yet, I should never open mail on Christmas Eve, nor should I have to receive this type of mail on Christmas Eve. I received a letter from the Executive Archdeacon of the Diocese, and this is not a surprise. It's not a surprise. And he's not making anything up, and he's not being nasty. His timeliness I could question, and other things I could question, but not the accuracy of what he says. He he asked us that early in the new year, as early as possible, I contact the church office to meet with him, the executive archdeacon, the bishop, and the controller, because as of December 19th, we're $65,000 in arrears on our payments to the diocese, which includes salary, it includes insurance and our assessment. $65,000 in arrears, and we have to discuss the viability of the parish. We've known this is coming for years. We've known this is coming for years. We know that every year we use a little bit more of the following year to pay off last year's debts. Last year we finished off paying salaries at the end of February, and we paid our assessment, I think it was July or August. So we know that fiscally we're not there. We also know statistically that it takes 100 families to make a church self-sustainable. We're about 75, so we've got, on the one hand, we've got this wonderful ministry stuff that's going on. And that's not made up, that's not exaggerated. We're actually doing it. I actually occasionally get a phone call, I'd say probably once every 2 or 3 months, from somebody asking, is it true that St. Mary's has done it? Yes. Most recent one was about all the socks we did to St. Michael's Mission. Apparently one of the people from St. Michael's Mission was talking to one of the clergy and calling up to ask me if it was true or not. So we've got all this amazing ministry stuff going on. Could do more. But then there's this other thing. There's this debt. And we got to make a decision whether we want to continue to exist as an autonomous, independent congregation or not, or even if it's important or not. Maybe, since we are an autonomous congregation, what we should do is petition the bishop to sell the building, and since we would still be a congregation, keep cash, that would probably be about $750,000, rent space for Beaconsfield United, help them out, and help us out too. Keep doing the ministry we're doing. We can strategize. We can talk about all the possibilities. We can talk about everything that's wrong with the diocese. And you know what? The list is longer than your arm. It's certainly longer both mine. There's all sorts of things wrong. But the thing that we've really, really got to embrace and wrestle with and take ownership of is that the ministry that we're called to do is what it's all about. That's what it's all about. That's what's eternal. That's what's got to keep on going. No matter what our structure looks like. And I firmly believe that if our structure changed, our diocesan structure changed, there would be a lot more possibilities in terms of ministry. But the ministry is there. All we got to do is go for it. Jesus created his ministry. It was not handed to him on a silver platter. And when, for example, I'm just pulling this one out of many miracles, when the man born blind came to him and said, "Son, David, have mercy on me," he didn't do that just because he saw, well, he didn't see, but there was this guy walking down the street. He came to him and asked him because he had heard what Jesus was doing. He heard what Jesus was doing. He wanted to be a part of that show because he heard what Jesus was doing. He saw the possibility. Well, you know what I mean. There were possibilities there. Jesus created the ministry. And the church structurally acts as if we expect it to fall into our laps with no effort on our part. It's not like that. The kingdom of God doesn't just burst into being spontaneously. God calls us with him to cause it to happen. We're not getting out there for the last generation. I don't believe we are, because I don't believe God will ever abandon his church. But there's truth in that as well. So what does God want? Well, it seems to me, on the one hand, it's incredibly profound and complicated, on the other hand, it is so unbelievably simple. So unbelievably simple. Here is, as far as I'm concerned, step number one. And I say this not as an iconoclast. An iconoclast is one who wants to tear down the structures, just tear down structures. I don't believe that's necessary, required, or wise. But I do believe structures need to be reformed. Start with the need, not with the structure. There's lots of, you go to lots of meetings about creating new opportunities and One of the phrases that drives me nuts more than any phrase these days is, think outside the box. The only people who I know genuinely who use that phrase are people who are so inside the box they wouldn't recognize the outside of the box if it fell on their face. It's a nonsense as far as I'm concerned. Start with the needs. What are the needs in the community? Whether the community we're looking at is Mansfield or Kirkland, or Mile End, or wherever. What are the needs in this community? Then you got to say, well, if I want to find out the needs, how do I go about doing that? Any minister that can't answer that question should go back to school. Okay? There was a minister that I sat down with as part of a group of ministers at a meeting. It was our monthly minister meeting. And we were talking about relationships with the schools in her area. And she said, well, the school just isn't interested in me coming in. And I knew this absolutely to be untrue, okay, for a reason I won't tell you, but I knew absolutely, well, I knew the principle, absolutely to be untrue. And so I said to her, I said, what's the principal's name at such and such a school? She did not know. You know, it was like the Hindenburger just crashed. You know, you're saying they're not interested, but you don't know the principal's name? The first thing you've got to do, get information. Know the name of the principal. Know the name of the mayor. Know the names of people who are in social services in the area. Know stuff like that. Get information. And then ask questions. And then shut up. And listen to the answers. You know, clergy, I think we've got a disease. Somebody needs to name it. We want to answer our own questions. We ask our questions, then we want to answer it. It's not a question now. It's an excuse to berate people or I don't know what. Ask questions and then wait for the answer. That's how you're going to find out what ministry is in your area. Second thing you can do, media. We have so much media around us that we're media up to our eyeballs. Use the media. Everybody, go home from church today and tonight, starting at about 8 o'clock. Listen to CJAD for about 3 hours. Now, it might affect your bedtime, but maybe not 3 hours tonight, but just listen to CJAD. Listen to the ads, not the talk shows. The talk shows, for the most part, are fooling your ignorance as far as I'm concerned. That's personal prejudice. Listen to the ads. You will be shocked, I think, by the number of ads that have to do with senior citizens' residences. Come to St. Genevieve, come to Shadow Royal, come to Shadow Dollar. All these places are advertising. They want people to move in. Does this tell you something about a possibility for ministry? It should. It should. It shouldn't surprise us either, because we can think, when we think, the baby boomers are retiring, and the parents of the baby boomers are dying. So, there is a ministry for the church. Structurally, what do we have in the diocese to ensure that all the residences in our parish are covered with ministry? Zip. There is nothing within our diocese that in any way challenges clergy to go to the city hall, get a list of all the seniors' residences in the area, and phone them up and ask if they would like occasionally for a minister to come and spend some time. Maybe even do a service, but at least come in and spend some time. And I've said 20 years ago, you go into a place like this and you can get a pretty sound rebuff. I've been rebuffed, I like the word, rebuffed a lot, you know. But now it's completely different. It's a completely different thing. They're calling churches, asking for ministers to come and do services. And you know what? Ministers are saying no. They're too busy. Too busy doing what? I don't know. If somebody is calling you and saying, could you come and do a service, you know, once a month would be great, more if you got the time. And you say, I'm too busy? Doing what? Are you too busy? You know? Now, I got to tell you, my wheels work better than my wings. And I got some problems, and I got problems getting around. And Artie, God bless her, and Marie, God bless her, and others, but I got to tell you, one of the easiest places to visit is the seniors' residence. And I guarantee you it's handicap equipped. And you know what else I'm going to tell you? Because I'm being really honest today, and I only got about another 3 minutes. When I go to the lakeshore and do a visit at the lakeshore, I see a lot more lay people from Anglican churches in visiting than I see clergy in visiting. And I wonder why. Maybe the problem with the church generally is not that we don't have enough money coming in, but that we aren't communicating relevance because we can't. Because we just aren't there. We just aren't there. So, I want to sum this up in a clue. 2015 is going to be a year that challenges us at St. Mary's. But I'm going to tell you something else. You know, I'm going to turn 59 in February. That's one more year till I begin my 7th decade. Okay? Can I tell you, and I don't want this to sound cocky or arrogant or ridiculous, there isn't a whole lot that frightens me that much anymore. Health stuff, oh yeah. But no, people don't frighten me that much anymore. So yeah, 2015 has to be a year of honest self-examination for St. Mary's. Do we really want to be here for the ministry, sake of the ministry that we have to offer? And if so, what are we willing to do about it? But it's also going to be because they want to talk to us, they're going to talk to us. And I'm not going to come across as harsh and angry and all the rest of it. But for the diocese as well. Because you know what? Maybe the diocese should limit its bank account, which is growing based on the sale of churches and stuff, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. You look and say, you know, we got $8 million plus in the bank. Maybe what we should do is say to St. Mary's, you know what? And maybe other churches too. Maybe choose four churches. TMR, St. Mary's, I got another couple in mind. And say, you know what, you guys are doing some interesting and unique ministries, but you don't have the resources yet to accomplish the task. So what we're going to do is, we're not going to give it to you, because we're afraid you'll go on a big holiday somewhere, but we will administer $250,000 in your name. And we're going to give you extra staff. And we're going to take care of your energy bills. So we're going to finish your windows so that you can focus on ministry. And then at the end of the year, and then we're going to come up with 3 goals for the year 2015. And at the end of the year, we're going to look around and see whether those goals were accomplished. One of the goals is going to be, you're going to start a church in Vaudreuil, where 35% of the population is English. Not that that means we only can be an English church, but you start where you're born. 35% English. We're going to start a church in Vaudreuil. We're going to give you enough staff that there'll be somebody who can spend enough time there doing the legwork that's needed. That's one of the things that we can do. We're going to make sure that the youth ministry and the seniors ministry that you're doing is not only staffed and sustained, but that you have the resources necessary to make it grow, to do the research necessary to make it grow. And then the third thing is, well, what would you say would be the third thing? That if we had $250,000, don't anybody say put new tiles on the floor. Don't say this is rhetorical. If we had $250,000 that we could use to do any kind of ministry you want, what would that ministry be? This I say, the church's resources are limited, and more limited by our imagination than any other reality. But God's resources are unlimited. And as we focus on Him, get over our hang-ups about what is and focus on the possibilities that God wants to open our eyes to, we will find that God can still do absolutely amazing things. After all, it's Christmas. The end. Let's pray.
Amen.
God, I pray for your church. I pray for our church. Every week we pray for the leadership of your church. I remember meeting with the Bishop of Toronto once, and he was talking about some of the interesting things they were doing there. And so much of the people, so many of the people who advised him were against the initiatives he started. And he said, that's a good thing about being a bishop, you can do what you want. God, I pray for courage and for imagination for bishops and for clergy as well. And I also pray for your church a call back to our original purpose. I pray for our worship. I pray for our fellowship together. I pray for things in your church that would transform lives. And God, I offer you today some grief. Grief that so many churches are being closed and sold off in areas where the needs are profound. In places like St. Columba's, St. Saviour's, St. Matthew's, St. Augustine, St. Paul's. Think of the stories I was hearing today about the United Church and how it basically is just living off rentals. And I pray for our church. Again, there are so many things to be grateful for at St. Mary's, and so many people who worked so hard for this place. But God, give us a vision of what is possible, the courage to speak the truth, to see it and to speak it, but also the wisdom to know how to speak in appropriate ways at appropriate times. God, I think of the story of Jesus being born, starting out as a little baby, and nobody knew, well they could have, they didn't know what was going to happen. It's amazing when he did. Through your grace and the power of your Spirit, create a new church, Lord. One that is relevant and involved and transformative. In Jesus' name we pray.
Amen.
Amen.